and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two complete crazy heads decide to binge history documentaries and Wikipedia articles and then turn around and tell each other what we have just learned. You have tuned in live. This is Theresa, and that is
Angie. Are they live?
I mean, they're not like this is a recorded podcast. I shouldn't have said that.
So you're live wherever you're at listening to it. And we're live right now giving it to you.
Right. Wherever you are, there
Whenever
you are.
Here we are.
And you can go back and you can listen to my dogs bark again in the background, or you could fast forward past it. It's all up to you.
Live your life.
Or don't. Actually, do live your life, honestly. Please don't opt out. Not on our account.
Yep. Please don't opt out. Like, she means don't by, like, if you're debating on whether or not you should go out in the world and socialize, or B, stay on your couch and eat ice cream and binge all of Bridgerton, you should probably do that.
I mean, do the latter. Do the latter. That's a good way to opt out. But if you need a hotline, email us. We'll give you a couple to call. Angie's covering her face in shame. And on that note, what have you been up to, Angie?
Well, my power was out today, so I was really questioning whether or not we were going to get to record because if the power's out, there's no Wi-Fi.
You can go to a coffee shop. We can record live from a Starbucks parking lot.
Okay, it's funny that you say that because I thought about that, and then I thought about the chaos that would be the sound in the background.
Yeah, that is very true.
And was like, if I don't tell her
We've got a mocha cappuccino for
Your Highness? Your Highness.
Did I ever tell you this shit that story?
Hit me.
Okay, so I was working at Starbucks and this person, like I'm cleaning out the Frappuccino machine and those things get gross. So
yeah, I worked at Starbucks too. Yeah.
Yeah. And woman comes up and she orders a drink, caramel macchiato, and we had our district manager in the back. So, definitely write your names on the cups. And the person at the register says, well, what's the name? Shithed. How do I spell it? As it sounds. So she writes Ed and realizes she's just written shithead on the cup. Looks at the cup, puts it on the bar. Coworker Justin picks up the cup, looks at it, makes the caramel macchiato, and she goes, and says, I've got a caramel macchiato for at the bar. District manager pops their head out.
Amazing.
Justin, come back here. Why did you not call the customer's name out? Because you don't know what was written on the cup.
Sir, you're going to want to go and see the cup.
Yeah. You're going to
ask. Yeah.
Yeah, because they wrote shithead on the cup. Beth, come back here. What was written on the cup? The name was Shithed, and I was told to spell it as it sounds.
So I did. And now I realize that I'm an idiot.
So I think we've gotten played. And I think he made a great choice.
One of my coworkers' favorite names to choose whenever given an option is Phil McCracken, in hopes that somebody else will yell Phil McCracken. And I'm like, why are you the way you are? Why? But then I laugh every time he does it because I am also 12 years old.
Mm-hmm. That's up there with Bend Over. Or Mike Hunt.
Yeah. Or, as my youngest loves to do to me, under. And then I say, underwear. Yeah. And he gets me every freaking time.
Right? Yeah. Kids, man.
Booger. Good thing he's cute.
So
my light is changing. Ooh, that's exciting.
Very mood lighting. It suddenly brightens up and darkens.
Yeah, the ambiance is to die for today.
And I was gonna say, do you want to go first? Do I go first? Who went first in episode 32? Oh, it was just you.
It was me. And here's the thing. Okay, I gotta tell you this. I want you to go first, but I am so excited to find out what your story is, because this might be the first time we share the same story.
No. There's no way. There's no way
Really?
we're sharing the same story.
Really?
Why do you think we're sharing the same story?
I, I, mm, I don't want to give it away yet. If you don't think we're sharing the same story,
Do you know the story of Hedy Lamarr?
is she the cells lady?
No.
Okay, go. I'm gonna say no then.
Okay.
So
So,
nope, we don't have the same story.
oh, thank God.
What? No, Ian thought this one would be the most perfect story to be the same story.
Okay.
Go.
All
You want to
right.
go for? Do you want to go first?
I'll go first. I mean, I've already
Okay,
blown my cover.
that's true. Hedy Lamarr. I'm
Okay.
here for it.
All right. Um, so my sources, first off, I wrote a blog post on Hedy Lamarr when I was at Orange Nebula and just absolutely love her. And do you know anything about her? Because that's why I'm like, you've got to know who
So
she
the
is.
name sounds familiar, but I'm not like things aren't clicking into place. I'm
Okay.
wait
All
till you
right.
get further and then maybe I'll scream at you.
All right. My sources do not include the blog post I wrote, which theoretically I could do if I were an academic. But my sources are a documentary, The Bombshell Hedy Lamarr, or Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story. And then womenshistory.org has a
I
feature on
love
her as well.
womenshistory.org.
Yep. Um, the documentary starts off with a bomb ass quote in which the quote is, any girl can look glamorous. All she has to do is stand still and look stupid. That's how the documentary starts.
I mean, in theory, she's not wrong. Can you hear my neighbor mowing his lawn?
No.
Okay.
But you also didn't witness that my water bottle has a squishy suck top
That's
and it had
amazing.
immediately gone underneath my knee. And I also have my knee with my wrapped with my eye brace. And so I just felt my knee suddenly get wet. And I thought, oh no,
What
it
has happened?
the icy knee brace has ruptured again because one of the times a couple months ago, I took my pen, I was doing embroidery and my needle, and I was like, oh, I need to put a new like thread in there and I need to get a new thread. So I like, oh, I need to park this somewhere. I'm gonna just put this in the knee brace, not thinking that it is filled with water. And it's like, as soon as I did, I was like, you stupid bitch.
So
Because
you
it
sprung a leak like a 1980s airbed waterbed then, huh?
exactly, that is exactly what happened. And so I felt my knee get wet just now. And I went, did I just put a needle in there somehow? Like I, and then I had to look and be like, no, it's the water bottle. It's fine. It's fine.
That's good.
I'm just a train wreck. It's fine. Anyhow, Hedy Lamarr. So Snow White is modeled after her.
Okay.
She inspired Catwoman, and she has one of the most recognizable faces of all time. But often she said she wasn't seen for who she was.
That sounds right.
Okay. So, Hedy Lamarr, let's zoom back to 1914. She's originally born Hedwig Eva Kessler, born in Vienna, Austria. She's born into a well-to-do Jewish family. She's an only child, and she receives a great deal of attention from her father, who's a bank director and curious man who inspires her to look at the world with open eyes.
Okay.
Auspicious start.
I like it. I'm here for it.
He would take her on long walks and discuss the inner workings of different machines, like a printing press or streetcars. And these conversations guided Lamarr and her thinking to the point where at only 5 years old, she takes apart a music box just to see how it works.
Yes.
Like
Get
this is
it, little
age
mama.
5, right?
Yes.
Okay. Her mother is a concert pianist and introduced her to the arts, placing her in ballet and piano lessons at a young age.
5 years old.
Right. So she's just killing
Can't have
it.
you taking apart my Victrola.
Mm-hmm. But again, think about this, 1914. So she's going to come of age during a very inauspicious time in Austria. Okay.
Okay.
Lamar's brilliant mind is ignored and her beauty took center stage when she was discovered by Max Reinhardt at age 16. She studied acting with Reinhardt in Berlin and was in her first small film by 1930. In a German film called Geld auf Straat, which is Money on the Street. However, it wasn't until 1932 that Lamarr gained a name recognition as an actress in her role in the controversial film Ecstasy.
Oh.
Yeah, and honestly, your response is great because that role, she portrays a female orgasm on scene. And this is like 1932.
You silly. Females did not do that in the 30s.
Females didn't have orgasms till the 80s.
Exactly. I don't know
That's
what
a new thing.
I don't know what you're talking about. Jeez.
Hitler denounces and bans the film
Of course.
and just forbids it from being played in Germany because the actress is Jewish. That's the reason. That's the sole reason.
No. Okay. Okay.
I mean, look.
This is tack it up to one more reason we hate Hitler.
When in doubt, hate Hitler.
That's our title.
I mean, when in doubt, capitalism is a previous episode title, so this would check.
Yeah.
Okay, so fast forward, right? There's an Austrian munitions dealer, Franz Mandl, who becomes Lamarr's adoring fan, and he sees her in a play, Sissy. Lamarr and Mandl marry in 1933, but this is short-lived. She said, quote,
the play Sissy, was it on the Empress?
Great question. I don't know. It would make sense that it was.
I'm curious now. Okay.
It would be, like that would all make sense. She said, I knew very soon that I could never be an actress while I was his wife. He was an absolute monarch in his marriage. I was like a doll. I was like a thing, some object of art which had to be guarded and imprisoned, having no mind, no life of its own. She was incredibly unhappy and forced to play host and smile on demand amongst Mendel's friends and scandalous business partners, some of whom were associated with the Nazi Party, and Mussolini is said to have dined in her home. That is how close to the center she was. Remind you, she is Jewish and denounced by Hitler by name.
Right, because she's Jewish.
Yeah. Like, we won't play that film with this actress because she is Jewish. So this is a bit uncomfortable.
And she's having fun.
Yeah, during sex. I know. So she escapes Mandel's grasp in 1937, fleeing to London. And I will say that the Netflix documentary did a brilliant job of really retelling this part of the story. In the story, she has a maid, and she hires this maid because this maid looks similar to her.
Okay.
She drugs the maid's tea. And then when the maid falls asleep, Lamarr puts on a maid uniform and her own jacket. And in her jacket, she has sewn all of her jewelry into it. Because again, she's married to a very wealthy man. And she gets on her bicycle and flees.
Okay.
Like, she is trying to look as inconspicuous as possible.
Right, but she's wearing her own jacket.
Well, yeah, she's wearing just a jacket, with strangely tons of jewelry sewn into the thing, and a maid uniform.
Okay.
So this is another, kind of Doris Payne deal.
Yeah. I was Doris Payne and Nancy Wake, because I could see Nancy Wake doing the same thing if she needed to.
I mean, yes. So while in London, Lamarr's luck takes a turn when she's introduced to Louis B. Mayer of the MGM Studios. He offers her $150 a month, which is $3,200 today.
Okay.
She turns him down. She walks out.
She's worth more. Mama's worth more.
I mean, she walks out, but then she regrets it because she is basically destitute.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. And so at that point, she buys a ticket to America on the same liner that Mayer is on and intentionally makes sure that he sees her.
Okay.
And then one night in her little modest room, she puts on the only couture dress that she has left, some of the few remaining jewels that she has, and she goes to dinner. Like, so she goes dressed to the nines. All eyes are on her, and Mayer at that point realizes he has to have her, and he offers her $500 a month, which is $10,896.75 a month.
That's doable.
Yeah. That's a bit more than what she had originally been offered.
Yeah.
So with this meeting, she secures her ticket to Hollywood, where she mystifies American audiences with her grace, beauty, and accent. In Hollywood, Lamarr was introduced to a variety of quirky real-life characters such as businessman and pilot Howard Hughes. How much you know about the Howard Hughes?
Enough to giggle, but I know he was quite eccentric and had the spruce goose.
Boom. Okay, so you're with me. Lamarr dates Howard and most notably is interested in his desire for innovation. Her scientific mind has been bottled up by Hollywood, but Hughes helps her fuel her innovation by giving her equipment, like a small set that she can use in her trailer on set. And while the inventing table set up at her,
like a radio set, is that what you're
like, unclear, but she has like a bunch of things that she can tool around with when she's at the studio.
Gotcha,
and
okay.
Then she's got a full setup at home.
Is she the Wi-Fi lady?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's all I remember. I'm so excited.
So you cut to the chase real quick.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, I mean, I'm not going to shut you down because she's the reason we have the ability to do this podcast, truly.
Yeah, she is.
Okay, so she sets all this up and he takes her to his airplane factories, and she's inspired to innovate as Hughes is looking at this because he wants to create faster planes, right? Like we're gearing up for World War II, and Hughes wants to make a ton of money by selling fast planes.
Right. Okay.
And she looks at his planes. She buys a book on fish and a book on birds. And she starts looking at the fastest fish, the fastest birds. And then she looks at his planes. She looks back at the fish, looks back at the birds. So then she sketches a new design for the wings of his planes. And upon showing the design to Hughes, he says to Lamarr, "You're a genius." Because she's looking at like the fish's wings or the fish's fins do this, the fastest bird's fins do this, or bird's wings. Right. And why don't we just add that to your plane? And he changes it, just like, boom, done. Now the planes are fast, just purely from her studying animals. So Lamarr is indeed a genius. And as the gears of her innovative mind can continue to turn, she once said that improving things comes naturally to me. She goes on to create an upgraded stoplight and a tablet that dissolves in water to make soda that's very similar to Coca-Cola.
Okay.
And so during the time, like a lot of like during World War II, rations or anything like that. So she's like, I still want a fizzy drink. I still want a fizzy soda. I can put this tablet in there.
So Alka-Seltzer.
But imagine Alka-Seltzer that tasted like Pepsi.
Yeah, like good Alka-Seltzer.
Yeah, like something you would actually drink, not when you feel like absolute garbage.
Yeah.
Her only problem with that is that she didn't realize at the time that everybody's water was a little bit different. San Diego water is a little bit different than LA water, is a little bit different than
right.
Jamestown. Like, you know what I mean? It's all different. And so as a result, the tablets dissolve slightly differently, like different densities. So it doesn't quite work. And so she's like, dang it, but she, at the time it made sense to her. And then when she realized how it manifests, she's like, well, that didn't quite pan out. However, her most significant invention, which we've already talked about, was engineered as the United States gears up for World War II. Lamarr in 1940 meets a dude named George Antheil at a dinner party. And Antheil is another quirky yet clever force that is just to be reckoned with. mostly people know him for his writing and his film scores and how he experiments with musical compositions. He shares the same inventive spirit as Lamarr, and they talk about him and Lamarr talk about a ton of different topics and different ways that they could help with the looming war. And Antheil recalls that Hedy said she didn't feel comfortable sitting there in Hollywood making lots of money when there were things that were so dismal.
Right.
I mean, she was married to like one of the biggest munition dealers of the Axis powers. So she had every right to really kind of hate her position in this war with what she knows, particularly when your ex-husband is a piece of crap. I say that, and I think very few people would look at their ex-husband and say, he's a decent man, but she had every right to say this dude is scum.
Yeah.
So the two of them start really working on how they can combat the Axis powers, and they come up with an extraordinary new communication system with the hope of guiding torpedoes to their targets in war.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So what we have, okay, and I don't want to blow it, but so the system that they designed uses frequency hopping in quotation marks. So having the ability to intercept radio waves and things like that gives you the ability to understand either what's happening or to manipulate them, right?
Right.
But the thing was, if we keep changing the frequency that we're on from, almost a perceivably random rate, then your competitors can't jump in and change it. They can't jam your signals.
Yeah, they can't intercept you.
Exactly. And so she's like, what if we did that for torpedoes?
Okay.
And then you can take your torpedo and do what you need to do with it, kind of radio control it without messing up and getting it taken over and hijacked. So with this, both the transmitter and receiver would be hopping to new frequencies together, which prevented the interception of radio waves and allows the torpedo to find the intended target.
I like this.
It sounds fascinating, right? And they ended up using, of all things, player pianos to come up with this technology, because a player piano has that big coil with a bunch of those, little slats.
Yeah, where you put your change in and then it plays automatically for you.
Yeah, and it has
Okay.
that big, like, have you ever seen the spools inside them?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they all have the different cutouts, and the cutouts indicate what keys go at what time. So that same ability would give them the opportunity to switch frequencies at those different rates.
Right. Okay.
So it was just kind of this, you got that off a player piano? Like, it's just fascinating to know what their inspiration was and how they got there, right? Like,
I feel the
just
same way about fax machines.
that is true.
I know it's so dumb, but it's like, oh, magic.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. Like, at this point, I'm thinking fax machine's ancient, but it's like, you know what? Can I create a fax machine from scratch? No, I can't. So it's fairly advanced.
Yep. I think the same thing every time I watch a fax go through, like, oh, we're still doing this.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but we're still doing it.
It's it's witchcraft to me, but I can,
Yeah, works for me.
Right. So after the creation, Lamarr and Antheil sought a patent and military support for the invention. And they did it under, like, there's a creator council or some like innovation. I should have written it down. It was in the documentary. And it was basically like, if you are a smart inventor, come join us and we will create things for the war and the war effort. Okay. And you will end up signing your patent over to the military. But if the military uses it, there's an understanding that they'll pay you for the patent.
Okay.
So in theory, you get nothing, but in actuality, historically, it's a good deal for everyone. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So there's that. And after its creation, they end up getting U.S. patent number 2,297,387 on August of 1992.
92?
42. Thank you. 1942. Thank you. I can't read numbers out loud. I just can't. Like, my brain sees the number. My brain says to the tongue, say that number. My tongue goes, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Actually, I'm going with the 90s. That was a great decade.
You know, honestly, I hear what you said. I understood the assignment, but I'm going to do my own thing.
Peace.
And that's what I do every single episode. And you have to correct me to the tune of hundreds of years or at least decades.
There was one where it was like several hundred years.
Yeah. And it's just like,
what?
Huh. And my brain just goes, yeah, this is what we're going with.
You know what, though? You did the same thing to me with Cassius Clay when I was like, Cassius Clay, and you're like, he's that old?
I mean, but to be fair, you said the right number. And I went, I think she doesn't mean what she says. I think she did a Theresa.
Doesn't know what she's talking
You know
about.
what? I'm going to jump in and I'm going to retell her story better than what she's doing. And I haven't researched it. I tried to mansplain the OG Cassius Clay to you is what I tried to do.
And I loved every second of it, especially the look on your face when you went, oh, that's not him?
Wow. Okay, well, I'm going to sit down and shut up.
Carry on then.
Okay, so back to the patent that was delivered in 42. The Navy decided against implementing the new system, and the rejection leads Lamarr to support the war effort with her celebrity by selling war bonds instead.
Hey, whatever works.
She sells like $2 million in war bonds.
Nice.
She's not even a U.S. citizen.
Hey, you know what? Whatever works.
Honestly, she's just a badass. So she ends up struggling with her career because all this is happening. Hollywood's being Hollywood. And part of it is she has been pigeonholed by her a breakthrough role in Ecstasy, you know, in the orgasm bit. And part of it is that MGM has really just decided not to give her roles that would help her break out. In the documentary, her children are interviewed quite extensively, and they talk about how the studio doctor ends up giving her medication that wakes her up and helps her sleep. And in hindsight, she's being given methamphetamines to keep her awake.
Oh, that's nice.
And we all know that methamphetamines have zero side effects.
Yeah, no, she's perfectly healthy. She's fine.
Yep. And
that's
this
all her teeth.
So she keeps most of her teeth. I mean, I don't see any mention of them coming out. But this puts considerable strain on her relationship with husbands, plural, and children.
Okay.
As you would expect. Like at one point, one of her children is talking about just being in the kitchen with her and her losing her mind and just throwing a pan against the wall and saying, you should have prevented that from happening, kind of deal. Like just absolute bonkers. And it's just like, well, I mean, you know, boof. That's what drugs will do.
Real quick.
Yep. So meanwhile, Lamarr's patent on the frequency hopping expires before she ever sees a penny of it. And then she continues to accumulate like credits, like film career kind of deals until like 1958. And her innovative genius was yet to be recognized by the public. And it wasn't until her later years that she receives any awards for her inventions. The electronic, yeah, you know, honestly, like, yeah, bummer deal. But the Electronic Frontier Foundation jointly awards Lamarr and Anthiel with their Pioneer Award in 1997. And by that point, Lamarr, because she is an aging starlet in Hollywood that doesn't value older women, she doesn't think that her contributions are worth anything because she's not as beautiful as she views that she should be.
I hate that for her.
And so she ends up becoming largely a recluse. Her grandchildren talk about receiving autographed headshots from her, thinking that that's what they want, not like a grandma to make cookies with.
Everybody wants a grandma to make cookies with.
That is very true. So Lamarr's son ends up receiving the award on her behalf and delivering a speech for her.
Okay.
She becomes the first woman to receive the Innovation Convention's Bowlby NAS Spirit of Achievement Award, although she dies in that's such a mouthful of an award, right?
I really wanted to ask you to say it again, but I won't make you.
I probably pronounced it 50 ways wrong, right? Like, you don't even
Just
want to
call
see
it
how
what
it's
it
written
is.
out.
It's just
Like,
an award.
have I had multiple shots of whiskey prior to recording this? Yes, I have. Today has been a week, right? Like the entire day has been a whole week.
I got you, babe.
Yep. So she does all this and she dies in 2000. She's inducted into the National Achievement wrong line. She's inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame for the development of frequency hopping technology in 2014. And
Okay.
this dubs her the mother of Wi-Fi. And I mean, honestly, like that is how we get all of these great things. And it's because of her, we have GPS and Bluetooth. Without that technology, those would be impossible.
That a girl, get it.
Right? And it's because, like, well, all of the other starlets were going out on the town and living it up. She's back in her trailer inventing things because she just didn't want to be out. She was just a recluse like us.
I love her.
Honestly. But just the quote, any girl can look glamorous. All she has to do is stand still and look stupid.
It does get you.
Yeah, and I mean, just jaw-droppingly gorgeous.
Is she I'm picturing she's got like shorter kind of bobbish hair in the picture, or maybe it's tucked under, but she's wearing like a black dress with polka dots or hearts on it. I'm thinking that might not be her. Okay. That is exactly who I was thinking. It is not a black dress. Okay.
Well, I mean, but there's so many photos of her being absolutely glamorous.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah. Okay, so she's got this diadem, like a star on her forehead, but then she is also like encased in the shiny. That is beautiful. I don't even know how to describe it. Sorry, listeners at home.
Just shinies and they're sparklies and they go around her face, and she
has these eyebrows that are like
she's got the 90s rail pencil thin eyebrows.
Like Selena would be proud.
Right. Yeah. But this is clearly 1940s, 1950s.
Yeah, that dress cut looks late 1940s, early 1950s.
Yeah, like Hollywood starlet from the starlet era.
Oh, she is stunning.
And then, like, I didn't realize that is who Snow White was modeled after. But as soon as I heard that, I was like, yeah, honestly, yep, that's Snow White.
Yeah, it really is. It's super checks.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And that is the story of Hedy Lamarr.
Oh, my goodness. You're right. Our stories don't match.
I was panicked. Literally panicked. Like, I was going to hang up and being like, we're going to record next week. And this episode, we're just skipping a week.
Dude, you know what'd be hilarious is if at one point we do end up on the same, and then that episode just gets lost and it goes from like episode 30 to 32. And like 31 is never accounted for.
Yeah. It's just like everyone goes, wait, what?
They labeled it wrong. No, they
didn't. No, they didn't. Theresa trash canned that one.
Bye.
Yeah. We'll only reference it in passing comments and hushed tones.
Similar to how one would reference Voldemort's return.
Yeah. Or Hedy Lamarr's ex.
Or Hitler.
No, we're very outright in our disdain for Hitler.
That's true. Yeah.
If you are not outright in your disdain for Hitler, you can delete us.
Unfriend us.
Block us. Unsubscribe. 0 stars, do not want.
Tell your friends.
Honestly, we have very few hills that we will die on. This is one of them.
True story.
Please and thank you.
In fact, our stories absolutely don't match.
Thank God.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start with mine at this moment, though, because our stories don't match.
And you were just like, I'm going to railroad her. This is going to be the time I watch her head blow. She's had a rough day and I'm about to push her over the edge and I'm looking forward to it, which is why I made her go first.
It's going to be freaking amazing.
Because I'm going to be like, well, now that you've told the story of Hedy Lamarr, I'm
Let
actually going to
me
pronounce
tell
the
the story.
names right.
Because I Googled it first.
I Googled it first.
Do you know that, okay, every single story I tell that has words that I may or may not know how to pronounce, I actually go and find the correct pronunciation and then write it phonetically in my notes next to how it's actually supposed to be spelled.
I did know that because you shared your notes on Julie Dobney once and I went,
That's right.
Dobney is spelled. Oh, that's how you say it.
Yep, Julie
Yeah.
Dobney. Yeah, because listen, when you look at how it's spelled, you're like, yeah, no, that's not how you say that.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Julie Dobney.
Right. Yep. Like any word in Welsh, come up with a way to pronounce it. You're wrong. Sound it out.
No
You're
right
wrong.
way. You're wrong. Yeah, and every word in Welsh is at least 37 letters long.
Right.
And all consonants.
Yeah.
With like maybe a vowel.
They make the word Reykjavik look like child's play.
They do. And that is a hard one when you're looking at it to be like, yeah, I can say that. I can't actually say that out loud.
No, I am going to keep my mouth shut on this one because it's really pronounced Marvin. It's like, really? Huh.
It's a Deshaun, but it's spelled with a T.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
And you're like, no, I wouldn't have guessed that. Nope.
Did not see that.
No.
Weird. It's like when you read a book, like if you're a book reader and then you listen to the audiobook and you're like, that's not how you say
they're
the
wrong. They're wrong. Like that happened to me during The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I was reading it out loud to my mom and she goes, it's Ashland or Aslan. Like I said it the way I wanted to say it. I was like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. Like, I get that you're using common phonetics and that me at the ripe old age of a fifth grader should damn well know better, but no, you're wrong. That is how it is in my brain. That is how we are going from here on out.
It's the Lion King. That's his name. No, that's how you spell it.
Yeah. And she's like, no, but that's not how English is pronounced. This is an English word. Like it's an English book. We're just going to go with Aslan. And I was like, no, in my brain, it's Ashland because that's how I have processed this.
Oh, the amount of times that has happened to me. The amount of times. Or worse, hearing it and then reading it. It's like, oh. That's not right either.
Listen, brain, we're going to need to come to terms with this.
Things have changed.
Right.
I need to work this out.
I'm going to need a pencil and some paper.
And all of a sudden it's that meme of the woman doing math.
Yeah. Yep. And there's alphabets in your math book and things are yeah.
And it's not even Greek. You don't know what planet it's from, but definitely not one we're familiar with. All right. I'm going to tell you, I've decided this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to tell you one of my sources first. I thought you might
not all of them.
No, you're going to get one to begin with, and then I'll give you the rest of the
beggars can't be choosers, I suppose.
It is the National Geographic. The article is called A Brief History of How Plastic Straws Took Over the World. Okay? So I'm going to talk to you about straws today.
None of this. This is word salad. Like, I'm going to need you to smile. I need to make sure that it's symmetrical, that you're not having a full-on stroke.
I am not having a stroke. I will blink 3 times.
You did start this recording before we were recording by saying you were smelling an electrical fire. Are you sure it's not burnt toast?
It wasn't burnt toast. I am actually thinking about that a lot. And you know what's funny is I always think it's popcorn. Like if I'm smelling popcorn, I'm having a stroke.
And apparently that's not like a very good indicator of stroke.
Not in my
just for those listening at home, don't not diagnose yourself of a stroke or seek medical attention on the basis of not smelling popcorn.
Probably call your doctor.
Don't listen to us for medical advice
at all.
We are not the ones.
we'll set it for you. We're
This
not
is
the ones
not
to
the
tell you how to
day.
fix it.
We are not the ones.
Not our circus.
No,
Not our
zero
skill
monkeys
set.
involved.
None whatsoever. You need a great potato salad recipe? I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it.
Do you want me to tell you if it's a great potato salad recipe? I'm here for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm not kidding when I tell you that the article is called A Brief History of How Plastic Straws Took Over the World. Okay? Just walk with me for a second.
You're bearing the lead on this. I can feel it.
I am. Just you're gonna love it. Straws have been used for like a super long time, like a really long time. Would you like to care to guess how long straws have been in use?
No, only because I recognized how old Nintendo is as a company, and it's older than you think.
You're right. Straws have been around at least since we have like proof that they were in existence in ancient Sumeria, which is Mesopotamia, right? Modern day Iraq and Syria. At least 5,000 years ago.
Yeah, I would not have guessed that long. I mean, but honestly, it's like you take a water reed, you put it in your beer.
Right, and that was the idea. My understanding is it was to go through the fermented items and get to the actual liquid you want to drink without getting the yuck in your mouth.
So,
In Sumeria, like in Sumeria.
okay.
I'm not talking about right now.
Right. So I'm just showing you my reading comprehension abilities or listening comprehension. Like I'm obviously listen comprehend. Honestly, it's that bad at this point. Um, but okay, so you put a bunch of your jungle hooch in a pot. It starts to ferment. You want to push past your rotting fruit pieces to the alcohol part without getting the chunkies.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Egyptians had straws as well, and we see them pop up all over the world for at least the last 5,000 years for different beverages ranging from beer to tea. Some of the straws that we found in artwork or in like funeral goods have been highly decorated with jewels and could be gold or silver. I have a photo I'll show you later that is from the 18th dynasty during the reign of Akhenaten, and it is a relief of him drinking his Egyptian version of beer with a straw. It's pretty interesting. Well, it actually might not be Akhenaten himself, but it's from his reign. However, it is said that the straw that we know and love today was first invented here in the US in the 1880s.
Okay, so
We've skipped a few thousand years.
What happened in the interim?
They stayed the same. They were like reeds, like you could find like a grass reed, like a rye reed, and then the bottom of it's hollow, so you just clip the tops and the bottoms, and then you have like not a plastic, a organic straw.
Suddenly changes. Honestly, we have a whole like container of bamboo straws. Did you see them when you were here? Did we have?
I don't think I saw them.
Okay, yeah, we bought like a ton of bamboo straws, and they're
That's
just
awesome.
lengths of bamboo that obviously are hollow because so is bamboo.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay.
Exact same idea. So the story goes like this. A man called Marvin Stone is trying on one very sweltering summer day to enjoy his mint julep, which is a classic beverage of the South in the American culture. However,
That's not alcoholic, is it? It's like a
julep is
mojito.
alcoholic. A mojito can be alcoholic too.
Well, I've only had alcoholic mojitos.
Yeah. So a mint julep is water, sugar, bourbon, and mint leaves.
Oh, I'm down for that.
Right?
And we'll be right back.
After these messages.
Honestly, I could do a julep
right now. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you that because of this, I actually went and bought the mint to make a julep.
I have mint growing. I had to put it in a pot so it didn't take over everything.
Which is why I had to go buy the mint, because I accidentally planted it in the front yard and it took over the entire front yard. So now we have to plant new. We had to get rid of it and plant new ones, and we haven't done that yet because of other reasons. But anyway, Mostly time. So anyway, he's trying to enjoy his mint julep, and he is drinking it with a piece of ryegrass. And my understanding is the ryegrass, after a time, will start to disintegrate in your beverage. And he wasn't real pleased with that because, it's not making his julep taste all that delicious. So
Yeah, because rye has a flavor unto itself.
right. So being the super dope inventor that Marvin Stone was, he decided that he could do something about it. He, quote, wrapped strips of paper around a pencil, glued them together, and soon he had an early prototype of paper drinking straws. He patented his design in 1888, and by 1890, his factory, Stone Industrial, which today is part of Precision Products Groups, was mass producing them.
Wait. So he decided he didn't like the wheatgrass flavor of the rye, and then decided he's going to take a bunch of glue and do paper and basically make it a protein push.
Kind of, but with the hope that the straw is not going to disintegrate in the beverage.
But I mean, it will kind of, it gets gushy. Even modern paper straws get kind of gushy. You cannot tell me that the
so
1800s
eventually
version was better.
No, it wasn't. Eventually, they would put the plastic coating that we have today on it, but this is the first version of that straw.
So it's a hint of Elmer's glue in your mint julep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In the 1930s, bendy straws were born.
That early?
Yeah.
Oh, bendy straws.
Bendy straws were born, and hospitals across America loved them. They were a great way to help their patients get their beverages, their water intake, if you will. All of this because he didn't like the taste of rye getting all up in his julep, which is made with bourbon, which is why I'm really here. I'm going to give you a brief history of bourbon because it's Bourbon Heritage.
I mean, this is really what got you. That you're like, how can I talk about bourbon for an hour? Hold up. Hold my julep.
Actually, what got me to the straw was telling my beloved husband how much I am so looking forward to telling you the history of bourbon, because bourbon is my favorite adult beverage.
Is this where the story is really going?
Yes.
So what are the rest of your sources, or do I have to wait?
Nope, I'm here to give you the rest of my sources right now. So, I have several, but my two main ones are whiskey.com, the history of bourbon, bottleneckmanagement.com, a timeline of whiskey, whiskeyadvocate.com, a timeline of bourbon, and several other, like the Spruce Eats, New Riff Distilling Company, who defines bourbon whiskey. There's a handful more, but I added them as sources because they answered a question I had that was like an aside, wasn't actually part of the story, but like, what does this mean? So I included them in case you ever need to learn how to make bourbon.
If I ever have to make bourbon, I have additional questions.
Yeah, me too. But I've got the places to start. So let me scroll back down. And just to inform you that I thought I would partake today, I poured the rest of my Knob Creek straight bourbon into this Yeti cup and doused some Pepsi over top of it. I did not have enough time to make a mint julep in honor of my new friend Marvin Stone.
I'm grateful you're taking a long, hard drag on that, because I'd finished my glass of whiskey. And I'd refilled it, and then I finished it again, and then I said, let's hit record.
I thought about just throwing a couple back before we started, but then it occurred to me I'm going to have to read. And I learned a whole lot of things the other night while discussing bourbon and straws with my husband about how I had never had whiskey or bourbon through a straw.
I don't think I have now either.
It's a whole different experience, like a whole different experience.
Explain.
Well, I was making dinner and I said to him, like I was telling him, how excited I am about this and like a couple of fun facts about like the early history of whiskey in Europe. And he went over to the cabinet and he pulled down my favorite Bird Dog peach bourbon, put it in a demi-tasse, and handed me a very long straw. And said, because he was reading about the straws, "What's different?" I, being the top-notch genius that I am, inhaled it so fast because it was in a straw. The
He said,
first thing
I
that
can't feel
happens
my lips.
right after that, the first thing that happened was all I could taste was the delicious sweet peach flavor of the bourbon itself.
Okay.
And then all at once, the entire shot hit the back of my throat and burned every inch. And I panicked.
You
But then thought,
panicked?
because I've never experienced that before. Like,
You just deep-throated whiskey.
Pretty much, yeah.
Or bourbon, yeah.
Yeah. And it was quite an event. And he laughed and he laughed and he laughed as I, for the first time in my life, had to chase a bourbon. Like,
With
I'm
bourbon?
drinking everything I can find. Pepsi, milk, whatever I can find. And then I sit down.
Oh, Pepsi and then milk?
Milk
Why
might
is
have been
that
involved.
bothering me? Why is that my
It might not
takeaway?
have been involved. I'm just telling you this because it was whatever was on the counter that I could drink.
Okay. Could have been cooking oil. You don't know.
You're right. Because within 5 minutes,
Oh, no.
you could feel it. Within 10 minutes, I had to sit down and he had to finish dinner. His exact words to me were, "You're a mess. Go sit down."
I'm going to be right back. I got to go get another glass of whiskey and a straw.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's a whole new experience. Bring some thing to chase it with, though, because that burn really gets you. At least for me, it did. I didn't expect it. And this is coming from someone
drinking it straight? Were you drinking it with water?
Nope, just straight.
Okay.
But like this, through the straw. All in one
Basically took a bong hit of bourbon.
Yes, because the straw was 12 inches long. So I thought if I don't get it all in one go, I'm not going to get it all ever because this straw is so long.
So now I'm curious as to where the F we're going with this.
I'm here to tell you the history of bourbon.
Oh, that's right. Okay, sorry. Apparently the whiskey's kicked in for me already, even though I didn't have my bong hit.
Well, I didn't either. Today's beverage of choice is Pepsi and Knob Creek.
Okay.
But don't think I won't be spending the entire month of September's podcasts with some type of mixed drink.
Are you doing a theme and didn't tell me?
At least in drinks.
Okay.
Don't judge.
Zero judgments, just jealousy.
Because I thought of it first.
The judgment is on myself.
How very dare I not set myself up for success? Or
no,
whatever.
I positioned myself poorly. This is nothing to do. Like,
well, we can reconvene next week and I can tell you a different story.
Look,
I mint julep in my hand.
I just want to say that I got a story. I got a secret to tell you about beer.
It's he's gonna fall asleep.
Come hold on. You lean closer. Come here. I got a story to tell you.
Aliens.
Hey, that's pretty. Where'd you get that earring? I like that.
I was just gonna say you're so pretty.
I love you.
We're both the drunk girl in the bathroom.
What were we talking about? I'm gonna take your hat now. This is mine.
Did you push record? Just checking.
We're gonna talk tomorrow, but I just want you to know that I love you.
Yes. So that's how I
carry
plan
on
for the rest of my month because it's September and September is all about bourbon. So the skill of distilling, or the art of distillation, if I'm pronouncing that right, showed up first in Mesopotamia like the straw. The ancient world distilled not just for drinks, but perfumes as well.
Perfume through a straw?
No, but like the art of distilling was used for not only beverages, but
now I'm with you.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
By 100, the Greeks are distilling seawater into drinking water.
Distillation. Okay.
Pretty cool, yeah.
Yep.
Sometime between 50 and 1000 AD, the process makes its way to Western Europe by way of the Moors, at which point medieval Christians do one of the things they are so very good at,
Beer.
And they take this idea and they begin using it to produce ingredients for various ceremonies. They also thought the art useful in the help of medicinal purposes to cure things such as colic, palsy, and smallpox.
Okay.
And beer. By 1000, somewhere between 1000 and 1200 AD, the process lands its way in Ireland and Scotland by way of traveling monks.
Okay.
And they set out to do what Ireland and Scotland are known for, which is beer and whiskey, right? However, they have neither the grapes nor the vineyards for winemaking, but the monks at this point are probably skilled beer makers, so there's a place to start. The locals and the traveling monks get real creative at this point, and they start using grain mash, and then after fermenting it, they distill it, and the first whiskey, after they ferment it, they distill it, and the first whiskey is born.
Wow.
By the 1200s, the process of distilling wine shows up in Italy. And if I'm not mistaken, the process of distilling wine is what ultimately makes brandy. But I'm not real familiar with brandy, so I'm kind of on the fence about that. But something I read makes me believe that.
You might be right, because I know when Gramps worked for the Gallows, he had the Gallo Wine Company, not like the Gallows humor. But I know he would bring home a case of wines and things like that, but he also had Gallo branded brandy.
Yeah, I think what makes brandy is that the wine, which is fermented and not distilled, gets distilled and turned into brandy. If I understand the process. In 1492, we can tell whiskey is well established in Ireland and Scotland. One source tells a story of a clan chief dying after, quote, and I'm going to jack this up, taking a surfeit, which is an excessive amount of aquavita at Christmas.
Aquavita, water of life.
This is written in the Irish Annals of Clonmacnoise.
So he imbibed so much water of life, he was deprived of said life.
In fact, he unsubscribed himself. It is established that the word whiskey comes from the Gaelic Eshkebaha, which is a shortened version of Ushkebetha, meaning water of life, also known as aquavita. Whiskey was originally used as a medicine, both as an internal anesthetic and as an external antibiotic. I thought this was really interesting. The manufacturing at this time of distilled spirits was limited to apothecaries and monasteries until the late 15th century. Which I think is hilarious.
Honestly, that is up there with modern day weed smokers going, it's medicinal.
Yes, you are not wrong. And that'll come back later.
Okay, I'm here for the segues.
Sorry. We see that in 1494, King James IV of Scotland is granting large amounts of malt to a one Friar John Core by order of the king to make the aquavita. When my boy Henry VIII has his little hissy fit and breaks up with the Catholic Church and changes the face of the earth, starting somewhere around 1536, he dissolves the monasteries. You remember that?
Yeah.
And it leaves the monks looking for ways to support themselves. Distilling was the answer. And I just got to say, how bad does it have to be when the church is turning to making booze to survive?
The
church owes everyone an apology.
The church and booze have a long history. I mean, during the Dark Ages, water was undrinkable, so you would go to church to get beer so you could stay alive.
Right. And champagne.
And honestly, I would probably go to church more if I got a pint on the way in.
Explains Ireland so much.
Right?
We love you, Ireland.
Think of the tithing.
Yes, I'm here for it.
If you walked into church and they gave you a pint, everybody, man, woman, child, and then they pass the plates around.
Gets a Guinness. Yeah.
You would put more in the collection. The churches, look, I know we're all struggling. I've got an idea.
We're here to help.
Think of the return that you'll get on this investment.
There are a lot of connoisseurs,
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, monks are looking for ways to import themselves, but at this point, enter stage left, America, which is a thing, right? European colonists start arriving to the New World and bring their old ideas with them as early as the 15th century. And here is where bourbon was born, but has yet to earn the name that would not come until the American Revolution. However, now seems like a great place to tell you a couple theories about the name. There are some disagreements as to why it's called bourbon, but the two front runners are the area of Kentucky that it was made, right? Bourbon County, Kentucky, or the South's ties to the French. Either way, both options work. Right. Both options work because Bourbon, Kentucky was named after the Bourbons. So either way, the story checks. But remember how I said, I didn't actually say this to you yet, but did you know that all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon?
I did. Could I have told you that? No. But when you said, I'm like, yes, I remember that.
Do you know why?
Because, no.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you the rules. For it to be considered bourbon, the mash, which is the mixture of grains from which it is distilled, must contain at least 51% corn. So the mash, go ahead.
Bourbon is basically me getting my vegetables.
Yeah, you're getting a salad.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I need to go get another cup of salad.
Putting my salad in a mason jar. The mash must also be distilled at no higher than 160 proof and put in the barrel for aging at no higher than 120 proof. No additives can be mixed into the mash. To be bourbon, it must be aged in new charred oak barrels. Most distilleries prefer white oak because it helps the whole waterproofing process. To be considered straight bourbon, it must be aged for a minimum of 2 years. If it is less than 4 years, the label must say so. And there's a delightful law. Quote, as defined in the United States law, straight bourbon whiskey is whiskey that is distilled in any of the 50 states from at least 51% fermented corn to no more than 160 proof alcohol by volume, and aged in new charred oak barrels for a minimum of 2 years. The proof going into the barrel cannot exceed 125, and it must be bottled at no less than 80. This definition is established for American whiskey production as per the U.S. Federal Standards of Identity for Distilled Spirits.
You bring up a good point that harkens back to a previous episode that you may not recognize. The Great Whiskey Fire of 1875. Yep. The reason why it offed 13 people, probably more, is because the proof of the alcohol declines as it ages. And so a lot of these people who died were drinking immature spirits, which they weren't accustomed to because it's basically rubbing alcohol at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it really just trashes your insides.
So I left out the Great Whiskey Fire because that is a story that you already told.
Right.
But I'm glad you brought it back because I was really hoping it was going to be included.
Because this is what we're here for. I just want you to know I'm listening and I remember the stories that I told, at least.
I think you do a great job of remember the stories that I told because sometimes you say stuff that I'm like, I said that.
Oh, I said that? I sound so smart.
I love that story. I should probably read it again.
Right. Like, what episode was that? I want to hear how amazing I am.
Check. Oh my God. I'll check my sources. And the most important part of it being bourbon is that it must be American made.
So this is like champagne can only come from the region of France. If it doesn't come from there, it's just sparkling wine.
Yes. Bourbon is only American made.
What is it if it's made anywhere else?
So, for example, if it's made in Scotland, it's Scotch.
Okay.
If it's made in Ireland, it's whiskey. If Japan also has a whiskey. It's just Japanese whiskey, and there's
Yeah.
sake.
Yeah.
Which
Sake is very different. Sake is made with rice.
right, but it's like the same idea as my understanding. I could be very
Okay.
wrong. I don't know anything
Okay.
about sake. I just know that it was mentioned a lot in my research.
Okay.
There are also laws that cater to the quality of bourbon as well. According to the Bourbon Obsessed website, here's the law in 1897 called Bottled and Bond Act, which, by the way, was sorely needed at this time. The law helped both the buyer, as in like you and me, and the distiller, because at this point in time, makers are they're not cutting the right ingredients in. They are mixing more water in, or to get the right color, instead of aging it right, they are throwing in like spit tobacco. Like they're not doing it right. So
that sounds absolutely
yeah. So the Bottled Bond Act of 1897 was essentially the first Consumer Protection Act, and it ensures the purity and the identity of the spirit that was being purchased. One, it must be produced by one distiller in one distilling season. So like you can't do it over multiple years. Like you're starting it and you're putting it in the barrel in the same year.
right.
Like
it no must combining.
Be right. It must be aged in wood and in contact with the wood, except for vodka, for at least 4 years in a federally bonded warehouse, bottled at 100 proof and free of additives except water. So like the purity standard goes up exponentially at this point. I think it's fun to say that by 1964, which is a little further ahead but fun to say, 95% of the bourbon produced in the US is produced in Kentucky.
This checks.
Right? Okay, so back on the other side of the pond, though, whiskey is still doing its thing. It's 1608. The old Bushmills distillery is licensed in Northern Ireland. Today, it holds the title of the oldest licensed whiskey distillery in the world. So I thought that was pretty cool. But remember, it's whiskey, not bourbon.
Right.
Between 1707 and 1725, the Acts of Union, which created Great Britain out of the kingdoms of England and Scotland, saw in the following years taxes rise dramatically. With the English malt tax of 1725 threatening the production of whiskey, the majority of Scottish distilleries went to ground and began production at night, giving whiskey one of its most famous nicknames, moonshine, which I thought was a purely American thing, but it is not. It started in Scotland in the 1700s.
I mean, the Scots are known for drinking, so I shouldn't be surprised.
I said the same thing.
But I thought of moonshine as clear.
Yeah, well, it's called moonshine because it's made at night.
Okay.
And also it's I don't know a ton about moonshine, like very little. My understanding is moonshine's process is a little different to begin with. Like you can make it in a bathtub. So unclear on what color moonshine's actually going to be. But by the time of the American Revolution, Americans could actually use whiskey as a form of currency.
I mean, you could do it now too, but it would take the right buyer.
Right. In 1783, Evan Williams founded the first commercial distillery in Louisville, Kentucky. Then, in 1791, after the end of the Revolution, came a need for the cash-strapped new country, so they imposed the first taxes on distilled beverages, full well knowing how this could go. Like, Washington himself had a distillery.
I mean, but this is also, hey, these people are bloodthirsty and they don't like taxes. So let's put a tax on whiskey.
The thing that could probably calm them down or make things a lot worse. One way or the other.
This sounds like playing with fire.
Absolutely, it does. For the large distilleries in the East, these taxes don't mean much, as the taxes were based on the capacity of the stills, not the quantity produced. So 6 cents per gallon to the distilleries with large stills was like nothing to pay for them, compared to the 9 cents per gallon for farmers with small stills. Also, yes?
No, it's just me doing some simple math, but anyhow, carry on.
Gotcha. Also, the large distilleries in the East didn't have to deal with the high costs of transport and production, unlike the fellows with the small farms. With the small farm stills, not only the fact that their tax was 9 cents per gallon, but also the location. They were cut off from the east by the Allegheny Mountains, creating big problems getting their grain and goods to market. For them, it was, quote, it was a much more economical solution to distill the grain and sell it as whiskey. The farmers in the West thought the new tax regime was unfair and refused to pay.
Yeah, sounds about accurate.
Doesn't it? This leads us to 1794 and the Great Whiskey Rebellion. Because we have to have a great every now and then.
And we started this story with straws?
We sure did.
Okay, carry on.
Sure did.
Carry on.
So since 1791, now I'm jacking up the years, thanks.
I do this to people for my next trick.
Tensions had been rising and taxes weren't getting paid, and the rebels took to humiliating their tax collectors. They preferred the old tar and feather method, and nothing was done to appease the rebels. In July of 1794, violence was afoot when 400 rebels gathered in or near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and set fire to the regional tax commissioner's house.
I mean, nothing says a statement like setting fire to the tax commissioner's home.
Right? Washington's response to this was to call the citizen militias of Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, and Virginia, totaling 13,000 men, under General Lee, who was the governor of Virginia at the time. Lee, Hamilton, and Washington,
yep,
all went west to meet the rebels, but by the time they got there in November, remember this is in July when they burned that guy's house. When they arrived in November, the rebels were gone.
You mean they didn't stay at the scene?
No,
for months.
For months, yeah. It's like they just set up shop right there.
Well, I'm confused. I thought that's what bad guys did.
Typically, yeah. They want to wait around for their captors, yeah. So they disbanded, but a total of 150 men were arrested and interrogated. 2 of them were found guilty. They were both later pardoned by Washington himself. Whiskey.com has this to say about it. Quote, the consistent and impressive demonstration of federal power by sending troops almost as numerous as the Army in the War of Independence had its effect. Nipped it in the bud. The Whiskey Rebellion was over. Incidentally, the whiskey tax was repealed by President Thomas Jefferson in 1802. Nipped the rebellion before it really started. Go Washington, I guess.
I mean,
go Jefferson for repealing the tax. But anyway, back in Scotland in 1820, a teetotaler called John Walker begins
teetotaler.
I like teetotaler.
I mean, you do you.
Whatever. Teetotaler called John Walker begins producing his own whiskey, and his becomes one of the most famous brands of Scotch in the world. Johnny Walker. So there's that.
Pretty decent.
The production of moonshine in the UK was ended in 1823, and the Scottish distilleries were given an option to legalize their operations by paying a fee. This next process comes from Bottleneck Management. They say, quote, the process that is sour mash was developed by Dr. James C. Crow in 1823 at what is now the Woodford Reserve Distillery in Kentucky. In the process, an amount of spent mash is added to a new mash, and the balance of acid and live yeast that is contained controls the growth of foreign bacteria, improving consistency between batches so that every bottle is as close to the previous as possible. This revolutionized the way in which bourbon is made and is also a current legal requirement when producing Tennessee whiskey. I thought that was important to add that there is also a new law regarding it. I mean, not terribly new, but
I mean, it's specific to Tennessee too.
Yeah. During the First World War, most distilleries are actually shut off from distilling beverages and are used to make gunpowder instead of whiskey. So the U.S. supplies get low.
That is a sad time.
I know, right? Enter Prohibition, which ruined everything for everyone.
Except Al Capone and the moonshine runners.
Right. All stocks were destroyed and the stills shut down, except for a few who got to make alcohol for medicinal uses. This was only available for the prescriptions, for
And you
which you
could get a
had,
prescription for a bunch of really weird things too.
yeah, to list those things, high blood pressure was one, pneumonia, digestive problems, or tuberculosis. Any one of those things could get you a prescription.
Look, I've got consumption, so I need to consume.
Yeah, maybe that's why it's called consumption.
I don't think so.
Neither do I, but it'd be funny. But don't think that didn't stop our friends in the north, the Canadians, and in the east. And I love this sentence. Quote, it was mainly the Dutch who took care of the illegal imports.
God bless the Dutch.
Right? From our European neighbors. And in the far south, from smuggling the goods. So we have Canadians, we have the Caribbean, and we have Europe smuggling stuff across the border for us. The large borders of continental United States made this an absolute treasure trove for smugglers. They made bank. And in 1933, Prohibition was repealed.
Because it didn't work.
No, it didn't. And I'm sure that they figured out you could tax the alcohol again and make more money. Now, I thought this was also really interesting. In the Second World War, American GIs would use half-gallon bottles of bourbon to supplement their pay by selling it to the German population of the towns they were in.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that was pretty cool. And that brings us to where we are today with over 809 distilleries here in the U.S., specifically for bourbon. My favorite adult beverage.
So I will, because, Scotch is indicative of the country it comes from. When my grandfather was coming back from England, he told me the story where he was at the airport and he was going through, security or customs, and he had this bottle of Scotch.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy says, you can't bring that through. My grandfather looks at him, he goes, do you like Scotch? The guy goes, yeah, I love Scotch. Scotch is great. My grandfather goes, oh, good. And because my grandfather's one of those, like, well, if I can't have it, you can't have it. He takes the lid off, holds it upside down, and drains the entire bottle in the middle, in between the two of them.
At the airport?
At the airport. Like, empties it on the ground in front of them.
Devastated that when I left your house, I didn't do that with my bottle of Pepsi.
Wow. That is a hard stance for a $1.68 bottle of Pepsi.
I bought it at the airport, so it was like a $9 bottle of Pepsi.
Okay. All right. I mean, I wouldn't have put it up there with bourbon, but I mean,
I drank my bourbon with Pepsi tonight.
I love that for you. I really do.
Some of us are loyal like that.
I mean, you are hardcore. It's something everybody says about you. It's on your LinkedIn profile. I get it.
I'm hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
mother of boys, drinker of bourbon. I get it.
If that is not a shirt for me, I might actually cry. Oh,
hold please. I got a magic marker. I'm gonna make go.
I'm gonna make you a t-shirt with a Sharpie. I actually want it to be a sticker to put right on my cup.
Mother of boys, drinker of bourbon.
My boss used to tell me when I would come back to work from lunch, if he would ask what was in my cup. What you got in there? What'd you go home and get?
Luminol.
Pepsi, sir. Do you want to look at it? I'm gonna sniff it. Okay.
I mean, look, I get my personality is drunk, but
so yeah, that's the history of bourbon in a nutshell. A very condensed timeline version of the history of bourbon. There's a lot more fun stories to share, but for the sake of an hour,
high proof version of whiskey or bourbon. Sorry, my apologies.
Unless you're drinking Johnny Walker or Jameson, in which case then it's just whiskey.
That's fair.
I also would like to add that we have a family that we're really good friends with that moved to Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after he moved, the husband took a picture of they went on a distillery tour.
Yeah.
Because there are 13 distilleries in his town.
That's a
And
pub
so,
crawl.
right. So and you can bourbon sample like you do wine, right?
Right.
So he bought a bottle from every distiller and he like took a picture and he was like, "Hey, come have coffee and bourbon in our garage this weekend, blah blah blah, whatever." I wanted to answer back with all my bottles of bourbon, and then I realized at the time, I don't have this many now, but at the time of like the 6 that I had, 4 of them were from his town.
Dang.
Like, so long story short, Ian, we need to go to Kentucky because apparently there is a pub crawl I must attend.
Right. Like, I'm not going to remember half of it, but the first
It's
half is
fine.
going to be great.
It's gonna be so much fun,
The last half will be great for everybody watching.
especially my husband.
Right.
Yeah, he'll think it's fabulous.
I have adored this.
You're welcome.
And at first I thought we were going to talk about like the straws and the noses of turtles. And I was going to be like, Angie, this is going a dark direction. Why are
This
we
is
talking
not
about
where we wanted to
straws?
go. No,
Yeah.
I had to tell you about straws because mint juleps and mint juleps because bourbon.
Look, everything's connected to everything.
It really is, and you can thank my husband for this because I was just going to give you the history of bourbon, but he was like, straws, babe.
But you got to lead in with straws. Like that's the only obvious intro.
Because obviously you live to troll her. Um,
You know, you do this, and then when I get you so incredibly good, you're going to be
ugh,
upset about it for months.
it's not so much upset as it is like I'm proud and mad at myself for getting got. You know, like I am proud to know you. You are a worthy adversary. You know,
It's just I'm infrequent with it. And when I do, I just serve it up. And I'm like, there's no way she's not going to, like, everything about this says it's a hoax, a hoax of a hoax of a hoax.
yeah, but you did it on the one thing you knew I wanted to be real.
I know.
Sure. But again, not mad at you. Like, so utterly delighted that I was had. I love being had. Just like I love being wrong about a book or a movie. Like, Game of Thrones ruined me. I could tell you like within the first 5 minutes of anything we watched how it was going to end. Exactly how it was going to end. And be right every single time. And then Game of Thrones happened, and I was only right about one thing, and that was who Jon Snow's mother was. Everything else
You knew
didn't see
nothing,
that
Jon
coming.
Snow.
Pretty much. And I was like, what
But
is
you
this
didn't read the
feeling?
books?
I read the first book after I watched the first season
Okay.
and started the second book. But I'm gonna be honest, I got like 2/3 of the way through and was like, this is I can't keep reading this because I got to a chapter that was from the perspective of Daenerys,
Mm-hmm.
and she was like humming and hoeing about what boy liked her. And I was like, you are the mother of dragons. Get it together.
But she's not that yet. Like it shows her like her character arc, right? Like,
Yeah, but I couldn't like I guess it wasn't even so like I get it. You're only like 16 years old. Like of course your brain is going through this even if you are a warmonger on your path back to your throne.
right.
Like I totally get that. But it was the words used to describe her inner monologue. I'm like there's no way she's this dumb. Like even at that age, even with what she's been through, there is no way she's going to say these things to herself. Her previous point of view of her.
Fair. Okay. Okay.
So I was like, yeah, I can't do this at present. Doesn't mean I won't go back later.
Like, I mean, three fistful of bourbon later, and it's suddenly a brilliant read.
I will tell you that the episode, I can't remember if it was the second to last season or the season, I think it was last season. What season is it where Jamie is on the treasure train and the dragons come? Is that the last season?
I'm an unreliable narrator in this capacity. It's been too long.
I think it was the last season, but like I knew that episode was coming and I literally had the bourbon out with me and I drank it the entire episode because I was not emotionally prepared to lose Jamie Lannister. I'd already gone through Jon Snow. I wasn't going to lose another one.
Not one of my boys.
When Jon Snow died, I literally stared at the wall for 30 minutes. And then finally looked at Ian and said, someone owes me an apology. And he was like, I can tell. See, I wasn't prepared to go through that with Jamie.
That's fair.
Yeah.
We should wrap up because
Yeah,
I should go eat something because my booze on my tummy is hitting a bit harder than I thought it would.
You should go eat, and I
I
should
know.
go convince my husband he should probably collect our son.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
These are all things. If you have enjoyed listening to us and you're thinking, gosh, what can I do
I
to
want to drink with
repay
them.
these lovely women for the things that they gift us? You can. And you can do that by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to this podcast, by forcing your mother's hairdresser's dog walker to listen as well. We're here for it. We appreciate you. And if there's like a way where you could be like, they are so wrong, it is also bourbon. If it is brute, let us know. And you can do that at unhingedhistorypod@gmail.com. Sign up for your fights against Angie. I will schedule them and live stream them. And on that note, goodbye.
Bye-bye.